Welcome to America's Rainforests, a distance learning adventure. My name is Sandy Frost, and students from across the United States and in Puerto Rico are tuning in today for this electronic field trip, and we welcome you all. We're coming to you live right now from our studio in Prince William County, Virginia. And joining us in the studio today is Terry Lawson and Mr. Chavez's 7th grade class from the Saunders Middle School right here in Prince William County. And also with us in the studio is Alexandra Kenny with the National Forest Foundation, and she's one of our sponsors for the program today. She's going to be helping with your email questions, and in just a minute or two, we're going to be going live to the Caribbean National Forest in Puerto Rico and the Tongass National Forest in Alaska. But first, let me tell you who I work for. I work for you. I work for the USDA Forest Service, and our national forests belong to everybody. Today's program gives us an opportunity to take you on an adventure to two special national forests. In the Caribbean National Forest in Puerto Rico, we're going to explore a tropical rainforest, and in the Tongass National Forest in Alaska, we're going to explore a temperate rainforest. As you'll soon discover, both are very special places. So, are you ready to begin our field trip? You're going to visit some really cool places and meet some new friends on this virtual adventure. And you'll have the chance to have your questions answered by expert biologists. Each of you will also be invited to take part in our game. So pay attention, because you can win some really cool prizes if you can figure out the correct answers. And we'll explain more about the game later. Let's go now to Puerto Rico and Alaska and see who's standing by. Susan Soltero, let's introduce you first. Susan, are you there?
Certainly an honor and a pleasure to be hosting live from Puerto Rico this broadcast from El Yunque. My name is Susan Soltero. I'm the senior meteorologist at Univision Puerto Rico, and normally it's easy to forecast the weather for a rainforest. Normally it calls for rain, but as you can see, it's a beautiful day here. The temperature is about 85 degrees. Now this is the forest we call El Yunque. We're standing at the canopy level about 50 feet up, and we call it El Yunque because Yunque means anvil in English. However, the name didn't come from the shape of the anvil. That's the shape of our mountain. It comes from the word the Indians use here in Puerto Rico, our Taino Indians, called this Yunque. And the Spaniards, when they heard that, Yunque meant the peak with white clouds. They didn't understand what they were saying, so they called it Yunque. So it works either way. In any case, for our Taino Indians, this was a sacred place. It certainly is one of our national treasures. And with me here is Pablo Cruz, the forest supervisor of the Caribbean National Forest, which is actually its name. Hi, Pablo.
Hi, Susan. Thank you, Susan. Greetings from El Yunque, the Caribbean National Forest, the only tropical rainforest in the U.S. National Forest System. As a forest supervisor and native of Puerto Rico, I'm delighted to be part of this project and glad you can join us in this broadcast and see some of the spectacular flora and fauna that we have here. The Caribbean National Forest is the oldest national forest in all nations' national forest system, and it's also the smallest national forest. We are very excited to share with you what makes this place so special. We're here in El Portal, our visitor center. It's warm and humid, and as a typical rainforest, it could rain on us at any time. So enjoy your tour on the wonderful world of rainforest.
But being the meteorologist, I'm going to hold off on that rain forecast, and we're going to do a field trip in a second. So we'll be back from Puerto Rico live. So back to you, Sandy.
We'll get back to you in just a minute. Now let's find out who's joining us in Alaska. Patty, are you there?
I am, Sandy. Hi. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Ketchikan, Alaska. My name's Patty Grantham, and I'm a district ranger with the USDA Forest Service. I work on the Tongass National Forest, the nation's largest. In a few minutes, I'm going to be introducing Brooke Hunt, who is an elementary school teacher at White Cliffs Elementary here in Ketchikan, and her 6th grade class. I'm also going to be introducing some experts that are going to be here to talk to us about the temperate rainforest. Just like in Puerto Rico, strangely enough, we have a beautiful day here in Ketchikan, Alaska, although it's about 45 degrees, not quite to 85. It could rain any second, though, just like any good rainforest does. So back to you, Sandy.
Oh, thanks, Patty. Now, before we get to our remote locations in Puerto Rico and Alaska and start exploring our rainforests, I'd like to introduce Dale Bosworth, who is Chief of the USDA Forest Service, and he's going to welcome us to our national forests.
Hello, I'm Dale Bosworth, Chief of the United States Forest Service. As Americans, we're pretty lucky. We have one of the finest systems of public lands in the world. All of us, every American citizen, owns an area of land bigger than many countries, countries like France, Italy, or Germany. At the Forest Service, we're lucky too. We have the privilege of managing some of those lands, the national forests and grasslands. These lands are spread across 42 states and Puerto Rico, and they cover an area almost twice as big as California. We manage these lands for you on behalf of the American people. The national forests and grasslands belong to you, and it's our duty to protect them so that you and even your children someday can use them in various ways. People use these lands in all kinds of ways. When you drink a glass of water, chances are good that it comes from national forest land. You can find all kinds of rare and endangered plants and animals on these lands, more than in almost any other place, because we protect their homes. You can come to the national forests and grasslands to see some of that wildlife, or maybe to hike, or to camp, or to ski. You can go hunting or fishing. You can have all kinds of outdoor fun. But with all these opportunities comes an obligation to manage the national forests and grasslands so that future generations will have these opportunities too. That's our job at the Forest Service. We can't just let nature take its course, because as natural as these lands might seem, conditions have changed. They are no longer natural, and they need our help. For example, in many places we're getting fires that are so big and so dangerous that they aren't natural anymore. Our job is to restore the forest to a condition where fires are smaller, so they can do what they're naturally supposed to do. Another example is what we call invasive species. These are plants or animals that come from far away, and they crowd out the species that are natural to an area. Our job is to keep them from doing that, to restore more natural conditions. There's another tough challenge that we face, and it's one where maybe you can help. More people than ever before are using the national forests and grasslands for outdoor fun, and some of them aren't very careful. Careless use can do a lot of damage. For example, it can erode trails, damage meadows, or destroy the banks of lakes and streams. It can take away the only homes for fish or wildlife. The national forests are so varied that they even include rainforests, and today you'll visit some of them. The Caribbean National Forest in Puerto Rico, which is a tropical rainforest, and some temperate rainforests on the Tongass, Chugach, and Olympic National Forests in Alaska and Washington. So have fun exploring and learning about these forests, but also take a look around the place where you live. I encourage you to visit a national forest or grassland near you. Take a hike, watch birds, ride a bike, paddle a stream, or catch a fish. Please remember, the national forests and grasslands are an American treasure. They are yours to use and enjoy. But if we want them to be there throughout our lives and for future generations, then we have an obligation to protect them. It's not only our job at the Forest Service, but also your job as an American citizen.
Thanks, Chief Bosworth. I think after today's broadcast, you'll know what special places our national forests are. Let's take a look at a map to see exactly where we're broadcasting from. We're here in Virginia in Prince William County near Washington, D.C. The Caribbean National Forest is located in Puerto Rico, and the Tongass National Forest is in Alaska. And our crew in Alaska is located in Ketchikan. Now, let's take a look at a map of the world's tropical and temperate rainforests. You can see that the tropical rainforests are in a band along the equator. And temperate rainforests are located in Alaska, Canada, and the Pacific Northwest, in Chile, and with some smaller pockets in other locations. Okay, what are we going to learn today? We have Jake here from the class to help fill us in. Jake.
Today we're going to learn about the ecology of both the tropical and temperate rainforests, why rainforests are important, some animals of the rainforest, how people have used the rainforest, and the native cultures of Puerto Rico and Alaska.
Great, thanks, Jake. Good job. So, are you ready to begin our exciting distance learning adventure? Make sure you pay attention, because we're also going to play a game during this broadcast. We'll give you some clues to help solve our mystery scramble. And the game works like this. During the program, 5 scrambled words will be given to you, and you must work with your classmates to fill in the blanks. The first 5 classes to email the correct answer to the mystery scramble will win some really cool prizes like Alexandra has. We've got a great, cute, smoky bear. We've got great books and posters, and even an adorable Koki frog. Listen to that, okay. An email address will appear on the bottom of the screen when we're ready to take your answers. So really pay attention because all the answers will be found in the program. The mystery scramble sentence looks like this. Okay, to get you started, we are going to give you the first 2 words to unscramble. Sometimes this is spelled as 1 word, but we prefer to spell it as 2. The words are now on your screen. Have a look and save these words so you can fill in the entire sentence. All right, let's get going on our field trip. Students at the Caribbean National Forest and the Tongass National Forest are going to be conducting a research activity during the broadcast. Let's go to Puerto Rico to find out what they're doing there. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Sandy. Check this out. It's actually the size of the leaves of the trees that we have here in our tropical rainforest, and we'll be talking about them in just a minute. First, I want you to meet Victor Cuevas. He's the biologist in charge of our adventure down here. Tell us what the activity the students are going to be doing is.
Susan, welcome, and welcome to all behind the camera to El Yunque, the Caribbean National Forest.
Thank you.
What we're doing with her students is we're gonna flag an area 6 meters by 6 meters, and they're gonna record every live species in there.
Why 6 meters by 6 meters?
Because that's a protocol we use to replicate. Everybody should do it the same, and everybody can do it again.
And I'm assuming you'll find plants, animals, insects.
Everything.
All right, 6 meters by 6 meters. Remember that, because you can try that at home. Alicia Landivar is the teacher from Estancias Montessori from Caguas, Puerto Rico. Caguas is in the center of the island, which is only 36 miles by 100. It's very small. How many students did you bring with you today?
13.
And what classes are they from?
7th grade through 9th grade.
And how did you prepare them for this field trip?
Oh, they make a lot of research and interview Dr. Ariel and Carranza.
So they were exposed to a lot of information beforehand so they would
Yes.
know what they were looking for?
Yes, they know.
Did you tell them that they were going to be finding snakes and spiders and tarantulas?
They're looking forward for that.
They are?
Yes.
Well, go ahead then. I'm sure they're going to
Okay.
have a fun time then because we
See
do
you.
have a lot of species there.
Come with us.
We'll check with you guys a little bit later, but right now let's talk to the director of the International Institute for Tropical Forestry. There is nobody in the world that knows more about tropical forests than Dr. Ariel Lugo, and I do want to mention that he did get a presidential award just yesterday for his work with tropical forests. You know, Ariel, I thought tropical forests only occurred, or rainforests occurred only in the tropics. I'm assuming that a lot of people feel the same way. They can occur anywhere in the world? Alaska?
That's right. They can occur in Alaska. Anywhere where you get sufficient rainfall, you can get rainforest.
But there's a lot of rain in a lot of different places, and I don't hear of rainforests in other places.
Of course, it's not as simple as the amount of rain. You have to have, the rainfall has to be 4 times the evaporation. So that if you evaporate a lot of water like Puerto Rico, it takes more rainfall in Puerto Rico to get a rainforest than it does in Alaska.
So in theory, then, you don't need that much rain, you just need it to be 4 times the evaporation. But who measures evaporation and how do they do that?
Well, meteorologists, scientists are always measuring everything, as you know.
Sure are.
And so we have statistics on everything. So if you get at least 4 times evaporation, and then you have rainforest.
Well, how much rain do we get here? Because I'm assuming we get more rain than Alaska.
That's right. Well, our rainforest here gets up to 200 inches of rain, which is a lot of water.
But put it in perspective, because I
Okay,
don't know what
let's-
200 inches is. I know, because I'm a meteorologist, but maybe a lot of people don't.
Well, you go to your backyard, to your swimming pool, and you stack all the water, and it'll be 16 feet deep.
Oh my God, so that is a lot of water. But big difference then between Alaska and Puerto Rico has to be the temperature.
Absolutely, and then that has big implications for the types of rainforest that you have. In Alaska, it's very cold, it freezes. In Puerto Rico, always warm.
Right, so the species have to hide part of the year, and I'm assuming we have more species then, more plants, more animals?
Well, our temperature here is nicer, so you have more species, more biodiversity than you have in Alaska.
Also, Alaska has forest fires. We have a few few forest fires, but not as big as they do there. But we do have hurricanes, and they don't get hurricanes up there.
A big difference between Alaska and Puerto Rico is the disturbance. The hurricanes have big implications for the forest, and thank God we don't have forest fires in our rainforest.
All right, and the trees are smaller as well, aren't they?
That's right. They're pruned by the wind, so they're shorter.
But they're stronger. And
Absolutely.
And the leaves help
And
to
very diverse.
protect you from the rain. Now this is an exotic leaf from an exotic
That's
tree,
right.
and this is a native leaf, and if you'll notice, this one really protects you from the rain. This one, not so
Ay,
good.
bendito, not too much.
Why don't we take a tour then of the forest?
Yes, let's go and roll the tape and see what the rainforest looks like. And today we're going to go into the forest and go up a tower and see how the structure of the forest changes with elevation, okay? Let's go. This is an experimental area, and here we're studying the rainfall as it falls through the canopy. It falls into these containers, and we can analyze the chemistry of the rainforest water. When it rains very hard in the rainforest, the water comes over the stems and into the ground. And that's why these trees, they have sometimes many plants growing on them. Another characteristic of the rainforest is that the dominant trees, they grow very straight, as you can see here in front of us. So what do you say if we go to the top of the forest, climb up there and see how it looks from up there?
Okay.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're halfway up the forest. Soon we'll be in the top. But I thought it would be nice to collect some leaves from this tree that we have next to us. So why don't you collect some leaves and let's keep them so that when we get to the top, we can compare with the leaves on the top of the forest. So go ahead and collect one for each of your friends. Okay, take another one and let's crush that leaf. You don't crush them. You crush it and see what kind of smell do you just crush it. Oh yes. You see many rainforest trees, they have special chemistry, and that's how they fight the insects. And you don't see too many holes in these leaves. It's because those leaves are very difficult to eat. They don't taste very good. So let's go to the top to see how the leaves are on top of the forest.
Okay.
Okay, here we're almost at the top of the forest, and it's raining because this is a rainforest. So now let's collect some leaves from the top of the tree. We're coming in the same tree. So why don't you collect some leaves and share with your friends up here. If you compare them now, you see there's a tremendous difference. Now, why would the leaves be so small up here and so large in the bottom of the forest? Anybody has an idea?
Because of the wind?
The wind, yes, there's more wind up here. There's more light. So the leaves doesn't leave as much sunlight. The ones in the bottom, they're growing in the shade. So they have to be large to collect the sunlight because after all, leaves collect sunlight to do photosynthesis, to make food that we eat sometimes. So you see, the same tree has an enormous change in leaf size from the bottom to the top. And that is a characteristic of rainforests. And that's the leaves, they sort of curl so they don't get overheated by the high sunlight up here. Of course, we don't have much sunlight today because it's raining, but when it's clear, it's very hot. And so the leaves, the size of the leaves helps them maintain their temperature. And when you're on top of the forest, if you're a small leaf, you can maintain the temperature better than if you are a large leaf. Okay, here we're in the top of the mountain, and we're in a cloud forest. As you can see, it's very cloudy here. And here we have a station to measure the climate of the area. You can see the little weather vane where we measure the direction of the wind. We measure the speed of the wind. You see over there some containers where we collect rainwater. And then you see these flat things with strings attached. That's the equipment that we use to measure clouds. And we can separate cloud water from rainwater. The rainwater will fall on the funnel, and then we collect it down. But the clouds will go through those little strings, and there we collect the cloud water. Now, why do we do that? The reason we do that is because in these cloud forests, the clouds are very important for plants. So what do you say if we go and see the plants and see how they intercept the clouds? Well, here, the trees are very short here, but we're still in the rainforest. And why don't you touch those leaves? How do you feel those leaves?
They're hard.
They're very hard. That's because at the top of the mountain there's a lot of wind, and the leaves have to be very hard to, to sustain the force of the wind. But how about putting your hand on this, and how do you feel that? It's very wet. You see, it's dripping water, and all this water comes from the clouds. So these plants here, they're called epiphytes, and they're very common in the rainforest. And these plants intercept the rain in the water in the clouds, and that's how they live. So they don't need the soil. They get their nutrients from the clouds. So the cloud forest, many plants in the cloud forest derive the nutrients from the rainforest. And what do we have here? Here we have, this is, what do you see inside?
Water.
Lots of water. And so this is a bromeliad, and they're very common in the rainforest, and they store water. And inside of that water, you get animals, you get microbes, you get little microcosms. So there's a lot of life, and all this water comes also from the cloud forest. We see here in the cloud forest, every surface is covered by plants. And here we're sitting on the forest floor, and we have this beautiful moss. And this is called sphagnum moss. And the sphagnum moss, sometimes you can find it in the forests of the United States, in the temperate forest or in the boreal forest. But here you have sphagnum moss in the tropics. And this plant also intercepts water from the clouds, and it lives off the nutrients that it derives from the clouds. Okay, here we are standing next to a huge rainforest tree. You know, this is one of the primary species of the rainforest in Puerto Rico, the Ausubo. I wonder, anybody knows how old this tree is? Any guess? Well, actually, we don't know. The age of the tropical trees are very difficult to estimate because they don't have growth rings like they do in, let's say, in Alaska, in the United States. So we have to guess at the age by the size of the tree and how fast it grows. And I would say that a tree like this is probably about 500 to 600 years old. And what that means is that the trees in the Caribbean, they're young because the hurricanes kill them, it knocks them over. And so the trees are usually small, not as big as you get in the western United States where they can grow for 1,000 years. Here it's very hard to find a tree that old. But look, this tree, it shows our age. You see all the plants that are growing on them, all the epiphytes, all the structure that the tree has. And if we look here, we see how the tree resolves one of the problems of living in the rainforest, which is how do you get enough oxygen to the roots so that the tree can survive in great heights. And you see these little points here? Those things are called lenticels, and that's how the tree gets oxygen to the roots. Okay, well, what makes the rainforest is lots of water. So here we have an example of the exuberance of the rainforest with the excess of water.
Well, thanks, Dr. Lugo, for that introduction to the tropical rainforest. Now let's go to Alaska and learn about the temperate rainforest. Back to you, Patty.
Thanks a lot, Sandy. We're going to talk to some experts about the temperate rainforest in a few minutes, but first we want to get Miss Hunt and her class started on the activity they're going to do today. They're going to be doing the same activity that the kids in Puerto Rico are doing. We've roped off a section of the forest, and they're going to be recording all the plants and the animals that they find there. So, Miss Hunt, what do you think the kids are going to find today?
Well, I think they're going to find an interesting variety of temperate rainforest species. I have split my class into 4 groups. One of them is down by the stream looking for aquatic life. And then I have another over here, 3 others over here actually. I have a group working on counting species in the canopy. And then another in the mid-canopy, working in the mid-canopy, kind of a limited area. And then the forest floor folks are have the most species to look at, probably.
Well, that sounds terrific, and I look forward to hearing what they're going to find a little bit later in the broadcast. So I'd like to bring on the first of our temperate rainforest experts now. I'd like to introduce Dr. Rick Meinzer. He is a research ecologist with the Forest Service's Pacific Northwest Research Station. And Dr. Meinzer, why don't you tell us a little bit about the temperate rainforest?
Okay, thanks, Patty. Well, this Alaskan rainforest that we're in is similar to the one you heard about in Puerto Rico in that it's wet here. Much more precipitation falls than the vegetation can use. But beyond that, there are some big differences that I'll talk about. The rainfall, part of the precipitation in this forest falls as snow during the winter, and it's more seasonal than in the tropical forest as a rule. During the summer, there's often a dry period, and that dry period gets longer as you go further south to the rainforests in Washington and Oregon. And you also heard a little bit about the role of wind in the forest in Puerto Rico. Well, we certainly don't have hurricanes here, but we do have high winds. A couple of days ago, we had some 80-mile-an-hour winds. And these winds play a role in shaping the forest because they occasionally knock trees down. And those trees that have fallen form gaps in the forest that allow trees that have been hanging around in the understory to grow up and become part of the forest canopy. Another important difference is in the number of species in the forest. This forest around us here has basically about 3 species of trees that dominate it: Sitka spruce, western hemlock, and red cedar, whereas in a small area of tropical forest, it's not uncommon to have more than 100 species of trees and hundreds of species of shrubs and other plants. The types of trees in this forest also differ. These trees are conifers, meaning that they bear cones instead of flowers. And tropical trees, of course, in tropical forest are flowering. Other differences are that conifers have needle-like leaves. This is a hemlock branch here with small needle-like leaves, and we call tropical trees broadleaf trees for obvious reasons. They have big, broad leaves. Another one of the differences between conifers and tropical trees is you can't see it from the outside, but it's in the wood. Most of us think of wood as a pretty solid thing. We build furniture and houses out of it. But if you look at it under the microscope, it's actually porous. And that's because the water that comes from the soil up to the leaves in the canopy moves through wood. And the plumbing that the water moves through in conifers is really different from broadleaf tropical trees. Conifers have small little cells about the length of an eyelash called tracheids in the wood, and the water moves up through the tracheids. It's very different in broadleaf trees. They have these little building blocks of their plumbing system, these little hollow cylinders that are stacked end to end to form vessels. Another big difference is in the height of the trees. The tallest temperate rainforest trees are up to 350 feet tall. That's in the coast redwood area, about 700 miles south of here, whereas the tallest tropical trees are only about half that height, about 150 feet tall or so. And despite the fact that these forests have a lot of water, for a tree that's 350 feet tall, it's a big problem to get water to the top. It has to move all the way from the roots, hundreds of feet up to the leaves. Water is really heavy. If you've ever tried to carry a 5-gallon bucket of water very far, you know how heavy it is. So these trees are pulling columns of water hundreds of feet tall up to the top. And that's a pretty risky proposition because if that water column separates, the top of the tree dies. All around me here, hanging around on the trees, you see epiphytes. Epiphytes are just simply plants that grow on other plants. And in a temperate rainforest like this, the epiphytes tend to be pretty simple plants. We've got a lot of mosses around here. There's a moss. This branch is heavily laden with mosses. And the other type of epiphyte that's really common here is lichens. And here you see kind of a hairy little lichen. And lichens are pretty neat because they're sort of a cooperative arrangement between 2 life forms, between a fungus and what we call a cyanobacteria, which is a blue-green bacteria that can do photosynthesis. And these lichens are really hardy because when the forest is dry, when it stops raining for a few days, these dry out and they go dormant. But as soon as it rains, they absorb water and they can do their photosynthesis right away in just a few minutes. The epiphytes in tropical forests are mostly flowering plants, orchids and bromeliads. There are about 10,000 species of orchids at least worldwide, and a couple thousand species of bromeliads. If bromeliads are in the same family as pineapple. In a forest like this, if you try to walk 100 feet in a straight line from here to another point, you find out that it's really hard to do it. You run into a lot of biomass. Biomass is simply living and dead biological material, the trees. These trunks that are around me here have probably been here for many decades, and the reason why temperate forests have so much biomass hanging around is because they're so much cooler. You heard earlier that it's about 85 degrees in Puerto Rico today. It's only about 40 degrees here. So with those kinds of temperatures, this biomass decomposes really slowly. The bacteria and fungi that make it decay work really slow in conditions like this. Also from down here, this forest is hundreds of feet tall. It's hard to see what's going on in the upper canopy, but what we did was we took a trip into the upper canopy of a forest that's about 700 or 800 miles from here in a canopy crane in Washington, and we're going to show you that in this video that follows. Okay, we're going to take a trip into the upper canopy of an old-growth temperate rainforest. We're here at the Wind River Canopy Crane in Washington State, and this is a joint project between the U.S. Forest Service and the University of Washington, and Ken Bible here is with the University of Washington. He's a scientist. One of the big differences between the tropical and the temperate rainforest is just the shape of the tops of the trees. You saw in the tropical trees that the crowns of the trees or the tops are umbrella-shaped or hemispherical shaped. Well, these temperate trees, these conifers, have very long, narrow crowns that go down maybe more than 100 feet down into the canopy. And that's a pretty good adaptation for where these forests grow, because they grow in the northern latitudes. The light angles are quite low in the fall and the spring, and that's a good adaptation to trap light. So what we're going to do is take a trip down the crown of this tall Douglas fir tree. It's over 200 feet tall, and the crown is very deep. It's maybe over 100 feet long from top to bottom. So there'll be leaves carrying out photosynthesis all the way from the top of this tree down into the forest. Because that's one different thing about this forest from the tropical forest, in that light penetrates very deeply into the canopy. Whereas if you go much below the top of the canopy in a tropical forest, there's very little light. Okay, in both tropical and temperate forests, the upper canopy here is where a lot of the action is in terms of what the forest does. The forest sucks up incredible amounts of carbon dioxide from the air during photosynthesis and gives off a large amount of water vapor. And with regard to water, here we are more than 200 feet above the ground, so the water has to get from the soil to the upper branches of these trees. And we found that in these old conifers like Douglas fir, it could take 2 to 3 weeks for water to get from the forest floor up to the top of the tree. And in work that we've done in tropical forests, we find that it's much quicker. It may only take a day or two for water to get to the tops of the trees. Part of that's because the trees are shorter, but it's also because these trees have different systems inside for conducting water. Tropical trees have pretty large tubes to conduct water, and the water moves really quickly. These conifers, like Douglas fir, have very small little tubes, and the water moves slowly. In terms of photosynthesis, one thing that we do at the top of the canopy is to measure photosynthesis with portable instruments like this. This is a little chamber that we can seal around the leaves, the foliage, like this. And air circulates between this chamber and a main instrument, and we can actually tell how much carbon dioxide these needles are taking up. And an interesting thing about these temperate conifers in this rainforest is that they can be active year-round. As long as it's above freezing, they can do their photosynthesis, almost like a tropical forest, which is active year-round. If you go into a more interior forest, say in a place like Montana or Wyoming, the trees go completely dormant during the winter, but not these. One thing we notice in these tree crowns, because they're so long, is the leaves or the foliage changes a lot going from the bottom to the top. Near the bottom, the needles are flattened and pretty wide and large, and as we go toward the top of the tree, you'll probably notice in this fir tree that the needles become shorter and they're kind of more erect. They stand up straight. And part of that's due to the difference in light between the bottom and the top of the tree, but part of it's due to water and how difficult it is for the tree to get water from the bottom to the top of the tree. Because it's so hard to get water at the top, when the needles are growing in the spring, they don't expand as much as near the bottom. So that's part of the reason why they're smaller. Just wanted to summarize a few features of rainforests. This one is cold and wet. The one in Puerto Rico is warm and wet. And the number of species here is much lower than the number of species in a forest like the one in Puerto Rico. The trees here are much taller than tropical trees. They have very different shaped crowns, long pointed crowns. Tropical trees are more umbrella shaped. They have different kinds of plumbing. The trees here have a different kind of a vascular system, as we call it. And the rates of decay are much slower in this forest. That's why there's a lot of biomass and dead logs hanging around.
Well, thanks a lot, Dr. Meinzer. That was really interesting, and I learned a lot about temperate rainforests. They're just amazing places, and the Tongass, where we are today, is an amazing place, and it contains most of the old temperate remaining forest in North America. It's an important place for the plants and animals that live here, and to all Americans too. It's especially important to all the communities in Southeast Alaska that depend on the forest for their drinking water, for wood, for food, for fuel wood, for recreation, and for the beautiful scenery that's here. That's really quite remarkable today, although it's still not 85 degrees. So we're going to go back and talk to some more experts in a little bit, but right now, Sandy, we're going to give it back to you.
Thanks, Patty. And thank you, Dr. Lugo and Dr. Meinzer, for those fascinating tours through the tropical and temperate rainforest. Okay, let's get back to our game. Are you ready for another word in the mystery scramble? Here's the sentence with the third word added. Now remember to save those words so that you'll have the whole sentence. The first 5 classes to send in the right answer at the end of the game wins. Rainforests provide homes for a wide diversity of animals. Let's meet some biologists who will introduce us to a few of the fascinating animals in the tropical and temperate rainforests. And let's start with you, Susan, in the Caribbean National Forest.
Here in our forest, we have several species in danger of extinction that live within the bounds of the forest, and we are very lucky today to meet one of the most rare animals and the most endangered species in the world, actually, between all the birds. Fernando Nunez is the supervisor of the Puerto Rican Parrot Recovery Program. They are leaders in the world in the work they do. First, tell me about the Puerto Rican parrot.
Yes, Susan, as you can see, the Puerto Rican parrot is largely green with red forehead and white ring around their eyes. It measures about 12 inches long, and it's one of the most endangered animals in the world, and it's also the only native parrot species remaining in the United States. It's estimated that it was abundant when Columbus discovered Puerto Rico.
How many were there when they arrived, the Spaniards?
It's estimated that maybe 1 million individuals survived in Puerto Rico at the time.
Really?
But the population gradually declined, and by 1960s there were only 70 birds, all confined to the Caribbean National Forest, and it continued declining until the 70s when there were only about 13 birds in the wild.
13?
Only 13 birds.
Now what happened? I know that they happened to nest in a certain type of log. Is that the reason why they disappeared?
Yes, they are secondary cavity nesters, and they need mature forests with large cavity forming trees to nest. And as human population increased in Puerto Rico, they used the woods for timber and fuel wood, and also they needed the lands for agriculture. So the habitat of the Puerto Rican parrot was gradually changed, and only the remaining habitat was here in the Caribbean National Forest.
They don't like to be around people either. They're very shy. I know when we've tried to take video of them, they usually hide as soon as they detect that you're there.
And that's another of the factors, that they tend to stay away from people, so they confine themselves into the Caribbean National Forest, which was the only remaining mature forest in Puerto Rico.
So how many are there in the wild right now, and what are you doing to try and get those numbers up?
There are about 30 individuals in the wild, and something that we're doing with in the 70s, the Fish and Wildlife Agency Service, the agency I work for, together with the Forest Service, established a captive propagation program here in the Caribbean National Forest. And in 1993, also we divided the captive flock and to the aviary managed by the Puerto Rico Department of Natural and Environmental Resources in another part of the island. It's important to keep them separated, so in case something happened in one of the aviaries, the captive flock survives elsewhere.
All right, well, why don't we take a look at that aviary right now?
Sure. Right here to my left, we have the pair bonding cage, where we form pairs. And to form those pairs, we use birds of different genetic makeup to make sure that we can avoid inbreeding depression. During the non-breeding season, we use the cage to hold birds and as a flight cage. So we're now inside the pair bonding cage,
And as you can see, we have the production of this year inside this cage. We just finished the breeding season, and we have birds. Sometimes we try to avoid mixing adult birds and young birds because aggression problems during the no-breeding season. So we keep them here so they learn to fly, and they learn some of the part of behavior that they need to use eventually. And later we move them to bigger flight cages outside this part of the apiary. To our left, you will see the breeding cages, and this is where we keep the breeding pairs. And we just finished the breeding season, and that's why you can see that our PVC nets are empty. But during the breeding season, we try to stay away from this area, keep them, just feed the birds and leave them alone so they can do their breeding activity. We have a kitchen where we prepare the food for the parrots. We have the monitor room, and the monitor room have two kind of monitors. One of them for the security and surveillance of the apiary, and another for surveillance and taking observations on breeding pairs in the breeding cages. So all cages have cameras that we can make observations on their breeding behavior and pair formation. In addition, we have a hospital for veterinary care, and it includes an operating room, incubators, and all the equipment that we need to take care of sick or injured birds. And we have an incubator room for eggs that they're abandoned, or we need some kind of emergency care, that we remove them from the pairs and take them to the incubators for hatching. One very important aspect of the ecology of the Caribbean are hurricanes, and this is why we have this big room here to move the flock. The entire flock has to be moved if a hurricane get close to Puerto Rico. So we had to do that very quickly to make sure that we protect the flock. As an example, back in 1989, Hurricane Hugo struck this part of the island, and we have all the captive flock here, and we didn't lose a single bird from the Hurricane Hugo. However, the wild population was reduced in half by that same hurricane.
So how many birds do we have in captivity right now, Fernando? And are you releasing them into the wild?
Yes, we have 182 birds in captivity, and we use the birds produced in captivity to reintroduce them into the wild. As you know, the wild population is critically endangered, so we supplement the wild population with released birds.
Are they surviving?
Yes, we're very pleased with our result, and 30 to 50% of them survive.
And that's pretty good for a recovery program.
It's comparable to the wild population. Yes.
Plus, one very interesting fact is we use nannies from the Dominican Republic, right? We bring other parrots to help our moms be better moms.
Yes, and also we use them when we need to test some experimental procedures that we cannot use the Puerto Rican parrots to do with.
You teach them to fly and to survive in the wild too, which is pretty interesting. Do they actually learn those techniques?
Yeah, we use techniques to show them how to survive in the wild and to avoid predators.
All right, well that's very interesting, Fernando. Thank you so much. These are very endangered birds, and you're very lucky to be able to see them up close and personal today. Back to you, Sandy.
You're welcome, Susan.
You know, there's no endangered land animals in the Tongass National Forest, but all animals are important to a healthy ecosystem. Now let's go to Alaska to see what some of the animals they have there. Patty.
Thanks, Sandy. I get to introduce another temperate rainforest expert right now. I have with me Dr. Dave Person. Dave is a research wildlife biologist with the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. Dave, could you tell us a little bit about rainforest, temperate rainforest ecology and the animals that live here?
Thanks, Patty. This temperate rainforests are some of the rarest ecosystems on Earth, and the animals and plants that live here are heavily influenced by the sea, by the cool climate, by the rainy weather, and by the mountainous terrain. And in fact, it's a good example of that. This stream that's next to us here, which is swollen by heavy rains, provides habitat for spawning salmon that come in out of the ocean, swim up here, lay their eggs, and they die. And of course, the heavy rains provide plenty of water for those fish to come up here and spawn. Well, the dead carcasses of those salmon provide tremendous input of nutrients to all the plants and trees along these streams. In fact, during years of high salmon runs, trees tend to grow faster and better. Those salmon, alive and dead, also provide tremendous food resource for bears, black and brown bears, which require that food in order to provide for hibernation during the winter months. And finally, these forests themselves affect the fish because the old trees decay and die. They fall into the streams. They create deep pools that salmon, that some of the species that overwinter for several years in fresh water, can use as habitat during those winter periods. Now, I'd like to introduce Alice Bryant. Alice is going to talk to us about a forest-dwelling bird. She is with the Deer Mountain Tribal Hatchery and Eagle Center. Alice?
Hi. This is a goshawk, and this goshawk happens to be just about 1.5 years old. And you can tell that by his plumage. He's halfway between a youngster and an adult. The youngsters have, thank you, the youngsters have this nice brown plumage that gives them a great camouflage in the forest. And then as they get to be an adult, they don't need that kind of camouflage, so they turn into this stunning gray. And one of the neat things about goshawks that makes them easy to identify is their eyes actually will change to a deep, dark red, which makes them look pretty darn scary. They also have good adaptations because they have very short, rounded wings that help them not hit trees as they're trying to maneuver through the trees, and a very long tail that helps use as a rudder. That helps them twist and turn also. They need that ability to twist and turn because they're hunting small birds, and we all know how maneuverable those birds are. And if these guys are going to catch them, they need to be as maneuverable as the birds that they're going after. Earlier this morning, we had a stellar jay that was harassing this bird because it's one of the birds that this guy would hunt. The other neat thing about the rainforest is they can put their nests really high so that they can see birds and things that are lower than them. And as the youngsters are learning to hunt and to fly, they're using that tall canopy as camouflage so that they can develop their skills during that time period. Back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Alice. While Alice is preparing another bird for us to view, I'm going to talk a little bit about mammals. My research I use wolves and deer primarily has been the focus of my research. And deer are these forests are very important for deer, particularly in wintertime. We can get a substantial amount of snow here. And the forest canopy intercepts that snow and allows deer to maneuver on the forest floor, not only for mobility, they can get away move through it without much snow, but also they can find vegetation to feed on throughout the wintertime. So it's very important for deer. Deer are the principal prey of wolves, and they are also prey for bears, and therefore any habitat that's beneficial to deer is beneficial to wolves, though wolves will also feed on salmon as well. Bears have a investment in these forests as well because these large trees provide denning cavities, especially the big decayed trees that they can overwinter and hibernate inside. Alice has another bird to show you, and I'll leave it to you.
Thank you. Good morning. That's Dot's way of saying good morning. That's actually a very soft call, and that's actually yes, thank you. That's a way of communication for them. That's kind of, she's just talking back and forth to me, although I don't understand bald eagle. But if they were to be really upset, it would be a very loud cackle that can be ear-piercing. So she's really not upset. She's just saying, hey. Bald eagles, well, what do you want me to tell them? Bald eagle, she has that white head and bright yellow beak, which means she's an adult. That takes about 5 to 6 years for them to develop that. And the youngsters are pretty much brown and very hard to distinguish between golden eagles, and that helps them with their camouflage. The old growth forest is very important to them because of the streams and that flow throughout, because there are all sorts of fish in there, including salmon. And they also need these old growth forests because their nests are so big that they can be between 8 and 10 feet in diameter and weigh about 2,000 pounds. So to be that big and that strong, they have to have big, strong limbs to support them. Now, they need to be that big and strong, yes, because of the babies. So the babies will become full size at about 3 months old, and they haven't left the nest yet. So they need a good size nest to accommodate that. Now, one of the things that I think is really exciting about the old forest growers is that at the same exact time that the bald eagles are fledging or leaving their nest, the salmon are spawning. And what that means is the salmon are weak and easy to catch, and that gives them a good learning tool as to how to catch fish, and then as they grow older, they'll be able to do it better. Back to you, Patty.
Thanks a lot, Alice, for all that great information, and thanks, Dave, and thanks to Dot and Dart for being here with us today, too. So take it back to you, Sandy.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks to both of you in Puerto Rico and Alaska for showing us some of the amazing animals that live in the tropical and temperate rainforests. Of course, people also live in the rainforests around the world. And in just a moment, we're going to learn about how people have interacted with their rainforest environments. Before we do that, though, let's spend a minute with our mystery scramble. Here's another clue for the mystery scramble. And here's the sentence with the fourth word. Remember, you've got to unscramble all the words to create the sentence. Well, we've introduced you to some amazing plants and animals that call the rainforest home. But through the centuries, people have depended on the rainforest too. They've used the forest as a source of food, wood, materials for all sorts of purposes, and even inspiration. I'm honored to introduce Dolly Garza, a Haida elder from Ketchikan, Alaska, who will tell us about how Native Alaskans depend on the temperate rainforest.
Iljuas dinan uijin, sutin di au uijin, skungwai hinudi kigaga, kis hade, pline di yadi. In my Haida language, I just introduced myself. I am the granddaughter of Elizabeth Gardner from Haukan, the daughter of Myrna Garza from Craig, and my name is Dolly Garza from Ketchikan. I also told you who my father is. I'm Raven Dog Salmon from the Tlin people in Klawock. Southeast Alaska is occupied primarily by two tribes, the Tlingit and the Haida. We have been occupying these lands for at least 10,000 years. The origination stories vary from region to region. In northern Southeast, legend tells that the Tlingit people came here by arriving under a large iceberg. The Haida people arrived from the southern area, from Haida Gwaii in the Canadian areas. All of Southeast was owned and occupied by tribes. There are numerous tribes occupying the rainforest archipelago, and these clans held territories. Ownership and stewardship rights to these territories were very important because a territory, in essence, maintained the clan. If we as a clan properly maintain and use these resources and show them respect, then these resources will continue to provide for us for the thousands of years that they have, and for hopefully the thousands of years that they will. Conservation was taught through many means. Children would grow up listening to stories that taught them to respect things such as salmon or bear, and would be taught that if they disrespected something like a salmon or a bear or even berries, that there would be harsh consequences shown to them. Historically, totem poles served several purposes. The large outside pole in the front of a clan house would identify that clan. It may have an eagle, killer whale, it may have a raven dog salmon. It identified someone coming into the village, which clan lived in that community house. There are also other types of poles. This one here behind me tells the legend of Ganakari tearing a sea lion apart. These stories are very important, and without a written language, these totem poles serve to hold our history as tribes and as clans. Contemporarily, we still have totem pole carvers, and next we will go to Wayne Hewson, who will tell us about the pole that he is carving.
And what I'm doing here is carving a 10-foot red cedar pole. Right at the very top of this pole, this is an eagle. And right here are the eagle's legs. There's also going to be a board attached to the back of the eagle just below his chin. It's going to give the eagle a wingspan of 8 feet. It'll be 4 feet on each side. But right here is a harbor seal, and he's been bitten on the tail by this killer whale. This blowhole of the killer whale is going to have a mask carved inside there, and it represents people of a village. This is a story pole.
Now, people in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest are still very dependent on the resources in the temperate rainforest. In Puerto Rico and the Caribbean National Forest, there's evidence of the native people who lived there centuries ago. When Columbus discovered Puerto Rico, the Taino population in the island was estimated to be between 30 and 60,000 people spread in 18 settlements. Present-day Puerto Ricans have blended aspects of their history from the Taino and the African cultures, Spanish, European, American, Caribbean islands, and others. Let's watch a short video.
Puerto Rico was settled thousands of years ago by native people, and Christopher Columbus encountered both the Carib and Taino native peoples during his explorations of the New World. The Tainos left behind some interesting petroglyphs in the Caribbean National Forest, and Jeff Walker, an archaeologist with the U.S. Forest Service, tells us about what he's found.
A petroglyph, the word comes from petro, stone, and glyph, writing. And then what it is, it's pecked into the rock with another rock. They would have not chiseled, but actually pecked into the rock, and then probably ground with another rock to make the groove. We've used different techniques for recording the glyphs throughout the years. We chose to use flour, just common wheat flour, and water to make a paste to paint the petroglyphs. And the reason we do that is because it won't abrade the stone like chalk would if we were to use chalk, and it'll leave us a nice white design. The interesting thing about this set of glyphs is that they're all similar. They probably all are of the swaddled baby motif, though they're different executions of the same message. A swaddled baby motif probably would have been a bundle burial where the person would have been wrapped up in their hammock or some sort of cloth, and that's the crosshatch design or on the body that we're seeing, with the head left exposed. Each one of these has something coming out of the top of their head, another being, and that could be the spirit leaving the body.
The United States took over Puerto Rico in 1898 at the close of the Spanish-American War. Puerto Rico has since become a commonwealth associated with the United States. This means that Puerto Ricans have the same rights and obligations as U.S. citizens, except they do not have the right to vote in presidential elections or the obligation to pay federal taxes. Puerto Ricans draw their unique heritage from the original native population, from Spanish royalists who sought refuge on the island, from African slaves imported to work sugar plantations, and from other Caribbean islanders. Music, food, fashions, and the vibrant Puerto Rican culture demonstrate this mix of influences. Puerto Rico, with almost 4 million people, is one of the most densely populated places on Earth. There are approximately 1,000 people per square mile. By comparison, Alaska has about 1 person per square mile. The Caribbean National Forest provides Puerto Ricans with a break from the congestion of suburban and city life. Visitors enjoy this tropical sanctuary, which sustains a huge diversity of plants and animals.
Gosh, it's interesting how the Caribbean National Forest is a refuge of wilderness surrounded by people, while in Alaska there are small towns and cities surrounded by vast forests. Okay. As we mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast, Ms. Hunt's class in Alaska and Ms. Landivar's class in Puerto Rico have been conducting their research activity and recording the flora and fauna, and that's plants and animals, that they have found within the designated space. Let's go first to Puerto Rico to learn what they've found. Susan.
Boy, do I have a treat for you. You may have heard of the Puerto Rican coqui. It sounds like this. And it's very controversial in Hawaii. And guess what we found in the forest? Victor, tell us about some of the species that live here.
We have in Puerto Rico 16 species of tree frogs, coquis. Only 2 says the word.
Oh, really? And
slowly in the city, faster in the mountain.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
the group, Eleuterodactylus, mean 3 fingers.
So they have 3 fingers.
Free, not web.
Oh,
like other
okay.
frog that has a web, it's 3 fingers.
And they're also live breeders, right? They don't lay
Eggs.
eggs. Okay, so and there are 16 species, and 3 of them are in danger of extinction, right?
Yeah.
But not the one that sings.
No, not the one that sings.
Okay, what other species
And you see
do you
this
have
bump here?
Yeah.
That's a typical way of recognizing a coquille. The bump here,
Looks like the head. It's actually the
this bump here.
Right. Okay. Well, what other species have you found here, and what can we find in our tropical forests?
They found many species of fungi.
Fungi.
Fungus.
Now we stay away from fungus in our houses and in our feet, but you have a lot of it here in the forest, and you celebrate it here. Actually, these are very beautiful. They look like flowers.
Fungi are extremely important in the rainforest. And in Puerto Rico, in our forests, more than 50% of all the trees in these forests need a relationship with fungi.
So they're actually very good.
If they are not there, those species don't survive.
And what are they doing? Creating nutrients?
In simple words, they are translating nutrients into a form that the trees can use.
Okay, we have other species that we want to show you.
They found a lot of snails.
Snails?
Yeah,
Let's take a
Katia.
look at those snails then. Oh my God, I don't think I've ever seen a snail this size. Can I touch them?
Yeah.
Is it slimy? A little bit? Is it uncomfortable? Let me see what it feels like. Is it going to hide when I touch it? No. Oh, it feels like a finger, actually. Now, these are quite large.
Yes. And you see the relationship easily. They eat fungi.
Okay.
So fungi make food, they start the cycle.
Well, let's talk to some of our students to see what they actually found in their 6 meter by 6 meter plot. Hi, girls. What's your name?
My name is Victoria. My name is Carla.
What did you find?
Well, we have found ferns, coitres, vines, rábano, and cachimbo. And actually, we have 60% of plants that are in the forest floor that is from the knee to the ground, and that's very much to a plot that has only 6 by 6 meters.
Okay, and why do you think that would be?
Because the taller trees work together like an umbrella.
Did you see any snakes? I know you were looking for some.
Oh, we didn't saw it.
Oh, no. But you did see a blue tarantula. Did you know that there were blue tarantulas in our forest?
Yeah, they were very little and they were so cute. They're very great.
But all in all, less species or more species than you expected?
More.
More species than you expected.
Show the baby coquille.
Oh, we have a baby coquille for you.
I named him Rayito.
Rayito means little ray of sunshine. For anybody who wants to try this at home, the recommendation is look and study from afar away.
Never collect anything, just bring it home in your photograph and don't take anything.
All right, let's go back to you, Sandy.
Wow, there is so much diversity in the tropical rainforest that it's sort of mind-boggling. You won't find that kind of species diversity anywhere else. Now let's go to Alaska and see what kind of results they've had. Patty?
Thanks a lot, Sandy. These 6th graders have been pretty busy here recording plants and animals that they've been finding. Miss Hunt, what are the results?
Let's see. Inga, what did you find at the stream?
In the aquatic group, we found baby coho, rainbow/steelhead fish, and the 3-spine stickleback.
You have some samples to show us?
Hang on to that. Well, we've got some stickleback in there. Oh my.
This is a 3-spine stickleback, and this is a baby coho.
Excellent. So what was the most interesting thing you found today, Inga?
I'd probably say the 3-spine stickleback because it doesn't really look like all the rest of the other fish we found.
Okay, thank you. Now let's go to the forest floor with Ellie.
On the forest floor, we found a ragbeg lichen, a dwarf dogwood, steppe moss, lanky moss, shield fern, deer heart, yellow ladle liverwort, false azalea, and for the litter we found red alder, Sitka spruce, Sitka spruce pine cone, red alder pine cone, western hemlock, and then we also found an unidentified fungus.
Excellent. So what was the most interesting thing your group found?
Probably the bird's nest fungus.
Thanks, Ellie. Let's check in with the mid-canopy now. TT, what did you find?
Well, we found about 10 blueberry bushes, 1 shield fern, 1 dead conifer, we couldn't figure out what it was, 1 old man's beard lichen, we found 2 spiders that were orange, we found 5 false azalea, we found 2 Christmas lichen, we found a lot of cattail moss, they were everywhere. We found 5 leaf bramble, we found 2 huckleberry bushes, we found clump of fan moss, we found bird nest fungus, we found 2 hemlocks, we found baby ragbag, we found lanky moss, and we found 3 mystery lichen.
Excellent. So what was the most interesting thing for your group?
Again, like Ellie said, bird nest fungus.
Okay, thanks, TT. Now, Case, what did you folks find in the canopy?
We found 2 Sitka spruce, 3 western hemlock, Christmas tree lichen, licorice fern that was growing like 40 feet high on the tree, cedar, cattail moss, witch's hair lichen, ragbag, dragon's cladonia, common hairy cat moss, red squirrel, Steller's jay, and the golden crowned kinglet.
And the most interesting thing for your group?
Was probably the golden crowned kinglet.
Okay, well done, everyone. Thank you.
Well, that was just amazing. I think that we might have some burgeoning scientists in this group. As you could tell, there is less diversity here in the temperate rainforest than we heard of in the tropical rainforest. But still, every ecological type is very important, and this is certainly one of them. Back to you, Sandy.
Thanks so much, Patty and Ms. Hunts-Klatsch for sharing the results of your research. I hope that all of you watching will be able to do a similar activity where you live. Okay, I'm ready to give you the very last clue for the mystery scramble. Are you ready? Here's the 5th and final word. In just a moment, we'll give you the email address where you can send the answer to the mystery scramble. We've got some cool prizes for the first 5 classes that get your answer in. Are you ready? Please send your answer to the email address that is now on your screen. Okay, we're just about ready to begin the question and answer portion of our program. I hope that you've learned a lot and are thinking of some really good questions you'd like to ask. We're going to have a short video about the National Forest Foundation and how you can become a friend of the forest. Please give us a call at 1-800-672-0067 to ask a question or send an email to rainforestslive@aol.com. We'll answer as many of your questions as we can in just a little bit.
From snow-capped volcanoes in Washington to the hardwood-covered hills in Georgia, our national forests contain 192 million remarkably diverse acres. Ensuring their ecological health and integrity is no easy task. The National Forest Foundation works every day to engage America in community-based and national programs that promote the health and public enjoyment of the national forest system. These are our public lands, and we believe that communities should play a role in caring for them today so that they are with us tomorrow. Together with more than 200 community groups and nonprofit organizations, our partners, the National Forest Foundation helps ensure lasting conservation successes in our nation's public lands. With our Friends of the Forest program, we want to engage and inform millions of Americans about the opportunities to enjoy and care for our national forests through an online medium. These forests are public lands and meant to be enjoyed. With use comes a responsibility to care for them into the future. The idea is catching on, and the number of friends is growing. When you become a friend of the forest, it shows you're committed to our national forests, that you are willing to act on your belief that healthy, clean, and beautiful national forests are important today and for the future. By becoming a friend of the forest, you're helping communities and local groups around the country plant trees, restore waterways, remove invasive species, reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfires, and improve the overall health of our forests and grasslands. To become a friend of the forest, please visit our website at www.becomeafriend.org. We are proud to be a major sponsor of this program.
Thanks so much for staying with us to learn even more about the tropical and temperate rainforests. Our experts are standing by so that you can call in or email your questions. Remember, the number is 800-672-0067 to talk directly to us here in the studio, or send your questions by email to rainforestslive@aol.com. Now we're going to take our first question from our audience here. So who's got a question? There you go. Please go ahead.
In Alaska, how does the snow affect the wildlife?
Okay, great. Thank you. In Alaska, how does the snow affect the wildlife? And can we go to our Alaska group, and maybe Dr. Person can help us with that?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Go ahead, Dave.
Winter weather can be very devastating on wildlife here, depending on the species. Like I said earlier, deer depend on some of these forest habitats in order to survive areas where there's deep snow. In other cases, winter provides abundant habitat for deer species because they can use the snow to their advantage. For example, small mammals can burrow under the snow and actually find safe pathways in order to get around from tree to tree. So it depends on the species, but winters can have a major influence on wildlife.
Well, great. Ready for the next question, Sandy?
Okay. Well, you know, actually, Patty, I think Alexandra might have the winners for the first 5 classrooms who sent in their answer. Is that right, Alexandra?
Thank you, Sandy.
Great.
We do.
Who are they?
Thanks to everybody that answered the mystery scramble. The first 5 classes to get the correct answers in via email were Mrs. Malone's 5th grade class from Racine, Wisconsin, Mr. Briggs' Penn Alexander School class from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the Melton's homeschooling family from Ketchikan, Alaska, Mrs. Cavacar's class from Bailey's Elementary School in Fairfax, Virginia, and lastly, Mrs. Riley's science classes in Fosteria, Ohio from the middle school. Congratulations to everybody, and thank you so much for participating.
That's great, Alexandra. And I should say, of course, the answer to it was rainforests protect plants and animals. So for everybody who figured that out, thanks so much for playing, and congratulations to the classes. Okay, now we have a call from Wisconsin. So Wisconsin, what is your question?
This is Dr. Dennis Yockerkers. I'm with Washington Elementary School. And their question is, are there bats in both the Caribbean National Forest and the Tongass National Forest?
Okay, thank you very much. Did we hear that? Are there bats in both the Caribbean and the Tongass National Forest? Should we go, Patty, to you first, and then we can go to Puerto Rico?
You bet. There are bats up here, and Dr. Dave might give us a little more information on that.
Yeah, there are certainly bats in the temperate rainforests of southeast Alaska. There are not many species. There's really only one that's abundant here. It's just a difficult environment for bats to exist in.
So that's all there is about bats up here, Sandy. Let's hear about Puerto Rico.
Okay, Puerto Rico, I'm betting you have a little bit more information about bats.
We do have a lot of bats here in Puerto Rico, so let's talk to Fernando Nunez, our biologist, about how many different bats we have in Puerto Rico and what their importance is in our ecosystem.
We have about 80 species of bats.
80?
8 species of bats. As you know, our island condition, mostly the flying animals can get to the island, and so most of our vertebrates are birds, and also we have bats, we have fruit bats, we have fishing bats, and we have insectivores also.
So they actually eat fish, some of them?
Yeah, we have a fishing bat, and you can at night see them fishing for small fishes in different areas, mangroves areas, and also channels.
You know, people criticize bats, but their guano is a good fertilizer, and they actually, one colony of bats can actually eat tons and tons of mosquitoes, right?
Yeah, they are beneficial. They also disperse the fruits of different trees in the rainforest, and they control insects and also are an important part of the ecosystem.
All right, Sandy, I hope that answered your question from Puerto Rico.
Thanks so much, Susan and Mr. Nunez. Now, I think we have a question from our email audience. So, Alexandra, what question do you have?
We got an email question from Mrs. Pierce's 6th grade class in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. They would like to know what a day in the life is like for a forestry scientist.
Oh, that's a great one. You know, perhaps, Patty, can we go to you and you can tell us what a day is like for you?
For a forest ranger, was that the question?
Was the question a forest ranger or scientist?
A forestry scientist.
Oh, okay. Perhaps Dr. Meinzer.
Dr. Meinzer, the question was, what's a day like? What's your typical day like for a forest scientist?
Canopy crane and do some research in the upper canopy, measure what the foliage is doing, how much photosynthesis it's doing. If I'm not out in the field, I might be staring at my computer screen all day trying to figure out what my data mean.
There's a typical day, Sandy.
Sounds great. Okay, great. Now we have a call from West Virginia. So caller, what's your question?
The question is, how does global warming affect rainforests?
Okay, how does global warming affect rainforests? That could be in either place, but let's go to Puerto Rico and see what you have to offer.
Well, let's answer that question, how global warming affects rainforests. But first we want to show you a demonstration that we're doing here. We have a lot of medicinal plants in the forest, and some of them burn. This is what kind of a tree?
Tabonuco tree.
Which is a turpentine tree, right? It smells like eucalyptus and menthol.
Is candlewood in English, and is the most magnificent tree of our flora. It provides food, and Fernando can explain.
It's
one of the favorite food items of the Puerto Rican parrots.
Oh, really? But it tastes like turpentine.
They like them.
All right.
Our people in the country use this type of instruments for light in the country. You can take a taste on these.
It's medicinal, it's like gum. But actually, Ariel, then how does global warming affect the tropical forest?
He's warming the globe right now with his torch.
Uh-oh.
But the rainforests are already growing in warm places, so if the world gets warmer, the rainforest could be affected by increasing the respiration of the trees, and therefore they might grow less. But also the possibility that we might get more hurricanes in Puerto Rico, more frequent hurricanes, and that would mean that the forest would be affected by those events.
All right, back to you then, Sandy.
Great, thank you so much, Susan. And can we go to Alaska? And perhaps Dr. Meinzer could comment on how global warming might be affecting the temperate rainforests.
Well, the way global warming might affect temperate forests could be rather complex. It may not be so much direct effects on the trees and how they grow, but on things that might attack trees. For instance, there's some insects that attack trees that if there's not a cold winter to decrease the insect population, they can multiply considerably and just devastate large areas of forest. So it's thought that that might be one of the effects of global warming, is that these insect populations would stay high and devastate large tracts of forest.
So Sandy, before we go back to you, we just found something interesting down in the creek here, and we'd like to show you.
Great.
My colleague Pete here has captured a male coho salmon. This salmon has probably not fed for quite a long time, since leaving the ocean, and its only purpose right now is to come up the stream, fertilize the eggs, and then it'll die. And these, as I said earlier, are so important. Salmon is so important to this ecosystem. For example, for a bear, brown bear, 1 day feeding on a salmon stream provides enough energy for 5 days of hibernation.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, that's wonderful. That's just fascinating. That was quite a treat to see that coho salmon. Okay, we have a question from our studio audience. So what's your question?
What kind of animals have only been found in Puerto Rico that are nearly extinct?
Oh, great question. Okay, what kind of animals have only been found in Puerto Rico that are nearly extinct?
What kind of animals have only been found in Puerto Rico that are nearly extinct? We do have a lot of native-only species here.
Well, we had a rodent that we argue whether it's extinct or not, and la huitia, that's how we call it. And
it's like a big gerbil.
Yes, and it used to be eaten by the native Puerto Ricans.
Okay.
But it hasn't been seen in a long time.
All right. Now we have the Puerto Rican parrot and the boa,
And
the Puerto Rican boa.
let's not forget the sapoconcho, which is a frog that lives in the dry forest and is buried under the soil and only comes out when it rains a lot.
Yeah, so it's out in mass
right now,
and breeding,
that's right.
which is good. People complain about the rain. What other species? Now we have 16 species of coquis, 3 are in danger of extinction. We talked about the parrot. Can you think of any others?
So, yeah, we have also here the charging hawk, the Puerto Rican charging hawk, which is a subspecies.
Is that the guaraguao or the
it's Falconcito de Sierra, and also the broadwing hawk, which is endangered. And we have the plain pigeon in other areas. We have the yellow-shouldered blackbird, and not including the sea turtles and the manatees and the whales.
Oh, that's
also
right. We have sea turtles and manatees and whales. Victor, you wanted to add something, but being an island, we have a lot of endemic species.
We lost the ground sloth.
The ground sloth. We had ground sloths
South America still has sloth. Puerto Rico had a ground sloth, probably this tall. Cuba had another ground sloth that is the tallest.
All right.
As big as us.
One more big surprise perhaps for you, Sandy. We also had hooded seals, and we lost those as well.
Thanks so much. Okay, and now we have a call from Alaska. Alaska, what's your question?
Hi. Hi. This is Sky from Petersburg, Alaska. I was wondering, how many types of fungi are there in Southeast Alaska?
Wow, that's a good question. I think we need to go to you folks, Patty. How many types of fungi in Southeast Alaska?
How many types of fungi? Well, we've got a lot of really great experts here that can nail that question, I'm sure. We're going to start with Dr. Meinzer, and he can chime in.
Well, I'm not a mycologist. That's a person who studies fungi, but my guess is that there are probably several dozens, if not over 100, because I know in the temperate forest to the south of here, there are types of fungi that associate with the roots of the trees and help the trees get nutrients, and there are hundreds of species, say, down in Washington and Oregon, so my guess is that there must be at least dozens up here.
Dr. Dave, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, yeah, I can't say how many different species there might be here in Southeast Alaska, but they are very important, particularly for northern flying squirrels. It's the main food source for flying squirrels.
Great, thanks so much.
That's the fungi report.
Great, thanks, Patty. Thanks, folks. We have one more question from our audience. So what's your question?
This is for Alaska. What is the effect on the animals when they drink acidic water?
For Alaska, what's the effect on animals when they drink acidic water?
The question was, what is the effect on animals when they drink acidic water? We'll start with Dave this time.
I don't have a clue. That's a very good question, but we have a lot of acidic water, but I couldn't answer that question one bit.
We'll ask the coho salmon later, okay? Back to you, Sandy.
Okay. Thanks so much, folks. You know, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions. And it's time to wrap up our distance learning adventure. I hope you have had as much fun today as we have had being with you all. This year, the Forest Service is celebrating 100 years of service. The Forest Service was created 100 years ago as an agency with a unique mission to sustain healthy, diverse, and productive forests and grasslands for present and future generations. And that future includes you. I want to thank all the students and teachers across the country and Puerto Rico for watching. And I want to thank all our experts in Alaska and Puerto Rico for helping us with this broadcast today. And I also want to thank Alexandra Kenny and the National Forest Foundation and all our great partners across the country for making this program possible. It's been a great adventure learning about America's rainforests. Please visit our website at rainforests.pwnet.org for more information and resources about America's tropical and temperate rainforests. Use the resources to get out and explore the forests in your own backyard. And teachers, please take a moment to go to this website and fill out the evaluation. Your comments will help us improve these programs in the future. Thanks again, folks, and adios. I